The rain hit the windshield so hard Ethan Hale could barely see the road ahead. His knuckles stayed white around the steering wheel as the same sentence repeated in his mind again and again. "Your father may not survive the night." The call had come from St. Matthew's Hospital less than an hour earlier. A calm voice had explained that Richard Hale had suffered a severe stroke in his office and was now in critical condition. Ethan almost didn't come. For 7 years, his relationship with his father had been little more than birthday texts and uncomfortable Christmas dinners arranged by lawyers and assistants. Ever since Richard married Vanessa, Ethan pressed harder on the gas. As a child he had worshipped his father. Richard Hale was the kind of man newspapers admired, a self-made businessman who turned a small construction company into a real estate empire worth millions. But after Ethan's mother died, Richard changed. He became colder, quieter, easier to manipulate. Then Vanessa entered their lives with her polished smile, diamond earrings, and perfectly rehearsed concern. Within a year she controlled everything. The family dinners stopped feeling like home. Ethan's opinions irritated her. His presence annoyed her. Eventually, every conversation with his father became an argument Vanessa somehow turned against him. By 23, Ethan had packed his bags and left the Hale mansion for good. Now at 30, he was racing to say goodbye to a man he barely recognized anymore. The hospital parking lot glistened under the storm lights as Ethan rushed inside. The smell of antiseptic and coffee filled the air. Nurses moved quickly through the halls while distant monitors beeped endlessly. At the front desk, a tired receptionist glanced at her computer. "Richard Hale, ICU room 814. Ethan nodded and hurried toward the elevators. As the doors opened on the 8th floor, he immediately heard voices coming from down the hall. One of them belonged to Vanessa. "He can barely hold the pen." A man whispered nervously. "That doesn't matter," Vanessa replied sharply. "He knows what he wants." Ethan slowed near the partially open ICU door. Inside, his father looked terrifyingly fragile. Tubes ran from his arms, while machines monitored every heartbeat. Richard's once powerful face appeared pale and sunken. His eyes barely stayed open. Vanessa stood beside the bed, wearing an elegant black coat despite the late hour. Next to her was a nervous-looking lawyer holding a stack of papers. "Richard," Vanessa said softly, leaning close enough for only him to hear. "Just sign." Something about the way she whispered it made Ethan's stomach twist. Richard's trembling hand barely moved. The lawyer hesitated. "Mrs. Hale, perhaps we should wait until—" "We are not waiting," Vanessa snapped quietly. "Do your job." Ethan pushed the door open harder than intended. "What the hell is going on?" Vanessa turned instantly, her expression shifting from irritation to fake sadness. "Ethan," she said, "thank goodness you came." The lawyer quickly lowered the papers. Ethan ignored them both and moved toward the bed. Seeing his father so weak nearly stole the breath from his lungs. "Dad!" Richard's eyes opened slightly. For a second, recognition appeared there. His lips moved weakly. "Ethan, I'm here." Richard's fingers twitched as if trying to reach for him. Vanessa stepped forward immediately. "Your father needs rest. The doctors said stress could worsen his condition." "Then why are you shoving papers in his face?" Ethan shot back. "They're business documents. At midnight, in intensive care." Vanessa folded her arms. "You haven't exactly been around, Ethan. There are things you wouldn't understand." Before Ethan could answer, a nurse quietly entered the room carrying medication. Her badge read, "Claire Monroe." She paused when she sensed the tension. Vanessa instantly changed her tone again. "Nurse, could you please explain to Ethan that his father requested privacy?" Claire glanced briefly at Richard, then at the unsigned documents. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Actually," she said carefully, "patients in critical neurological condition are usually advised not to sign legal paperwork until cleared by physicians." An awkward silence filled the room. The lawyer suddenly looked very uncomfortable. Vanessa smiled thinly. "Thank you for your opinion." Claire said nothing else, but Ethan noticed something unusual before she turned away. A small recording light blinked from the phone, partially hidden inside her scrub pocket. His pulse quickened. Was she recording this? Vanessa leaned closer to Richard again, her voice becoming almost dangerously sweet. "Richard," she whispered, "please, just sign, and this will all be over." Richard's eyes suddenly filled with panic. With surprising strength, his weak hand grabbed Ethan's wrist. His mouth trembled as he struggled to force out words. "Don't," he rasped. Ethan leaned closer. "Don't what?" Richard's breathing became uneven. His eyes darted toward the papers, then toward Vanessa, and suddenly the heart monitor began screaming. The sharp scream of the heart monitor echoed through the ICU as doctors and nurses rushed into the room. Ethan was shoved backward while medical staff surrounded his father's bed. "Sir, you need to step outside." Ethan stumbled into the hallway, his chest tight with panic. Through the small glass window, he watched doctors fighting to stabilize Richard Hale while Vanessa stood in the corner, tears suddenly streaming down her face like a performance rehearsed too many times. Only one person inside didn't look surprised, Nurse Claire Monroe. She moved quickly beside the doctors, but Ethan caught her eyes for a brief second. Something inside them felt uneasy, suspicious. After nearly 20 minutes, a physician finally stepped into the hallway. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "Mr. Hale suffered another massive stroke. Ethan's stomach dropped. He's alive." The doctor continued, "But his brain activity is extremely limited. If there are family members who need to visit, now would be the time." Vanessa immediately burst into louder tears and collapsed dramatically against the wall. Ethan barely reacted. His mind remained frozen on his father's final warning. Don't what? Don't trust Vanessa. Don't sign the papers." Or something worse. 2 days later, Richard Hale died just before sunrise. The news spread quickly across the city. Billionaire developer Richard Hale had passed away at 63, leaving behind a fortune, luxury properties, and one very public family tragedy. The funeral was held at a massive stone church overlooking downtown. Black cars lined the streets while reporters waited outside the gates, hoping to capture photos of the grieving family. Ethan stood near the back alone. He barely recognized half the people attending. Politicians, executives, investors, men who once praised his father now whispered carefully behind folded hands. Vanessa moved gracefully among them in a designer black dress, accepting condolences like a widow in a movie scene. Every time someone looked toward Ethan, their expression carried quiet judgment: the estranged son, the disappointment, the man who left. As the service ended, Vanessa approached the podium for the final speech. Her voice cracked perfectly at the right moments. "Richard was a devoted husband," she said softly. "A generous man who sacrificed everything for the people he loved." Ethan clenched his jaw, then Vanessa looked directly at him. Even when those people abandoned him, a few uncomfortable murmurs spread through the room. Ethan felt heat rise into his face, but he stayed silent. That was exactly what Vanessa wanted, a public reaction. After the burial, the family gathered at Hale Manor for the will reading. The mansion looked exactly the same as Ethan remembered. Marble floors, enormous chandeliers, walls filled with expensive art that never made the house feel warm. Vanessa sat calmly at the head of the table while the family attorney opened a leather folder. As requested by Mr. Richard Hale, the lawyer began. "This updated will was signed 3 nights ago." 3 nights ago, the night in the ICU, Ethan's stomach tightened, the lawyer cleared his throat. "To my beloved wife Vanessa Hale, I leave controlling ownership of Hale Developments, all primary bank accounts, the Manhattan penthouse, Aspen property, and majority estate holdings." Ethan stared in disbelief. The lawyer continued, "To my son Ethan Hale, I leave the Lake House property located in Cedar Creek and a personal handwritten letter." That was it. No company shares, no inheritance, nothing. Vanessa lowered her eyes as if hiding grief, but Ethan saw the tiny smile pulling at the corner of her lips. "This is insane," Ethan said quietly. The attorney adjusted his glasses nervously. "The documents are legally binding. My father would never leave me with nothing." Vanessa finally spoke. Maybe he remembered who actually stayed beside him. Ethan stood abruptly. You manipulated him. The room fell silent. Vanessa gasped softly, pretending to be wounded. How dare you accuse me of something so cruel after your father just died? You forced him to sign those papers while he was barely conscious. The lawyer immediately interrupted. Mr. Hale, these accusations are serious. So is fraud. Vanessa's eyes hardened for only a split second before sadness returned to her face. You disappeared for years, Ethan, she whispered. Your father cried over that constantly. Maybe this was his final decision. Ethan felt rage boiling inside him, but before he could answer, his phone vibrated in his pocket, unknown number. He ignored it. A second later, another message appeared. I know what happened in that hospital room. Your father tried to resist. Meet me tomorrow. Come alone. Claire Monroe. Ethan's heartbeat stopped. The nurse, slowly, he looked back at Vanessa. For the first time since returning home, he saw something beyond her polished appearance. Fear, tiny, hidden, but real, and suddenly Ethan realized his father hadn't died peacefully. Something terrible had happened in that hospital room. And somewhere the truth had been recorded. Ethan didn't sleep that night. The lake house he had inherited felt less like property and more like an insult, an isolated wooden structure surrounded by dark water and silence. Every creak of the walls reminded him of his father's final breath, of Vanessa's soft voice in the ICU, and of that single word that still haunted him. At sunrise, he drove to the address Claire Monroe had sent, a small cafe near the hospital district. She was already there. Nurse Claire looked different outside the hospital. No scrubs, no clinical calm. Just a tired woman in a gray coat with sharp, observant eyes. A small flash drive sat on the table between them. You came, she said simply. You said you had proof. Claire didn't hesitate. I recorded everything. Ethan leaned forward immediately. Everything, including what your stepmother did in that room. His hands tightened. Show me. Claire pulled out her phone and connected it to the flash drive. Few seconds later, audio filled the table between them. At first, beeping machines, then faint breathing. Then Vanessa's voice, just sign. Ethan froze. The recording continued. Richard's weak voice. No, I want Ethan. Vanessa, sharper now. Ethan isn't here. He left you. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. A pause. Then the sound of paper shifting. The lawyer's nervous voice. Mrs. Hale, maybe we should. Vanessa, do it. Ethan's jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Claire stopped the audio. There's more, she said quietly. But this is the cleanest part. The rest shows your father resisting. His heart rate spiked after she leaned in and whispered something directly to him. Ethan looked up sharply. What did she whisper? Claire hesitated. We don't know, but right after that he coded. Silence stretched between them. Ethan finally spoke. Why didn't you report this immediately? Claire's eyes darkened. Because I tried. Hospital administration buried it within hours. Vanessa Hale has influence in places you wouldn't believe. That name again. Influence, control, power. She didn't just manipulate him. Claire added, she timed everything. The lawyer came with pre-prepared documents. The witnesses were all her people. Ethan felt something cold forming in his chest. This was planned, he said. Claire nodded. Before Ethan could respond, Claire slid another item across the table. A folded hospital printout. What's this? Your father's final scan report, she said. Before he fully lost consciousness, he had a brief lucid window. Ethan unfolded it carefully. At the bottom, barely legible handwriting had been preserved in the medical notes. Ask for the original will. Safe deposit box, Cedar Creek Bank. Do not trust Vanessa. Ethan's breath caught. His father had tried to warn him. Even at the edge of death, Richard had fought back. He hid the real will. Ethan whispered. Claire nodded. And I think Vanessa knows that too. As if summoned by her name, Ethan's phone buzzed violently. Unknown caller. He answered. A smooth, cold voice greeted him. Ethan, Vanessa said softly, I heard you've been meeting people. He didn't respond. I hope you're not doing anything reckless, she continued. Grief makes people imagine things. Ethan stood slowly. You killed him. A pause, then a soft laugh. That's a dangerous accusation. You forced him to sign. I signed nothing. She interrupted calmly. Your father made his decisions. You were never part of them. The line went silent for a moment. Then Vanessa added something colder. If you keep digging, you'll lose even that lake house. Don't forget everything you have came from him. The call ended. Ethan lowered the phone, his hands trembling with anger. Claire watched him carefully. There's something else. He looked up. The safe deposit box your father mentioned, she said. It requires 2 keys. One is in his estate records, the other. She paused. Vanessa probably thinks she already has it. Ethan's eyes narrowed, and if she doesn't, Claire leaned in slightly. Then she'll do everything she can to make sure you never find it. That night, Ethan returned to the lake house and opened his father's old study box for the first time in years. Just covered everything. Memories he had buried sat waiting inside. At the very bottom, under old financial records, he found an envelope marked in his father's handwriting. For Ethan, and if I don't get the chance to speak. His hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a single line. If Vanessa controls the estate, she will destroy everything I built. Trust no one in the house except the truth you uncover yourself. And attached beneath it a small brass key. Ethan stared at it in silence, then slowly he clenched it in his fist. Vanessa thought she had already won, but his father had left him something stronger than money. He had left him proof. And now Ethan was no longer grieving. He was ready to fight back. The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the back rows, whispering about the Hale inheritance scandal that had quietly exploded across the city. Vanessa Hale sat in the front like she owned the room, perfect posture, calm expression, designer black suit. Beside her, the family attorney shuffled documents nervously. Ethan sat alone across the aisle. On the table in front of him lay 3 things: the hospital recording, the safe deposit box key, and his father's final handwritten note. Today, everything ended or began. The judge entered. We are here regarding the contested estate of Richard Hale. Vanessa's lawyer stood first. Your Honor, the will presented is fully legal, signed, and witnessed according to medical approval at the time. Ethan's attorney, assigned last minute by Claire's hospital whistleblowing contact, rose slowly. We contest that claim, he said. We have evidence that Mr. Richard Hale was under extreme medical distress and undue influence at the time of signing. Vanessa didn't flinch. Speculation, her lawyer snapped. Ethan finally stood. No, he said firmly, not speculation. The judge looked at him. You may proceed. Ethan turned slightly toward the courtroom screen. Claire stood near the back. She gave a small nod. The recording began. At first the room heard only hospital noise, beeping machines, distant footsteps, faint breathing. Then Vanessa's voice filled the courtroom. Just sign. A ripple went through the crowd. Vanessa's expression tightened slightly. The recording continued. Richard's weak voice. No, I want Ethan. Vanessa, sharper now. Ethan isn't here. He left you. Gasps spread across the room. The lawyer beside Vanessa leaned forward quickly, whispering urgently, but it was too late. The audio kept playing. Paper rustling, the doctor's nervous protest, then Vanessa again. Closer now, lower, almost intimate. Just sign and this ends. And then a sudden sound. A sharp gasp, the monitor beeping rapidly. Claire had already explained this part to Ethan. Right after this moment, Richard's condition collapsed. The recording stopped. Silence swallowed the courtroom. Ethan stepped forward. My father didn't die peacefully, he said, voice steady but burning. He was pressured in his final conscious moments. That will was not his free decision. Vanessa finally spoke, her voice shaking slightly now. That recording proves nothing but grief and misunderstanding. Ethan looked at her directly, then explained this. He placed the brass key on the table. A murmur filled the courtroom. Vanessa's eyes flickered for the first time. Ethan continued, My father left a second will, hidden in a safe deposit box. He knew exactly what you were doing. Her lawyer suddenly leaned toward her. Did you know about this? For the first time, Vanessa didn't answer immediately. That silence was louder than anything else. The judge raised a hand. Order. Ethan turned to Claire. She nodded again. Within minutes, the contents of the safe deposit box were brought in by the bank representative. A sealed envelope, marked in Richard Hale's handwriting. The judge opened it personally. Inside was a notarized original will. The room fell completely silent. Richard Hale's true final testament left the majority of his estate to Ethan Hale, citing protection of legacy against internal manipulation and external coercion. Vanessa's face drained of color. No, she whispered. The judge continued reading. Furthermore, a separate letter alleges coercion, emotional manipulation, and unauthorized medical interference by Mrs. Vanessa Hale. The hammer came down. This court invalidates the contested will and reinstates the original estate distribution. A sharp sound echoed through the courtroom. Final judgment. Vanessa stood slowly, disbelief turning into rage. This is a setup, she snapped. He's lying, all of you are lying. Security moved closer. Ethan stepped forward one last time. You whispered just sign to a dying man, he said quietly, and you thought no one was watching. Vanessa's eyes burned with fury, but underneath it, fear finally broke through. For the first time, she had nowhere left to hide. As security escorted her out, the courtroom remained silent. Outside, cameras flashed, but Ethan didn't look at them. He looked at Claire. You saved me, he said. She shook her head slightly. No, your father did. Later that evening, Ethan stood alone at his father's grave. The sky was calm now. No storm, no noise, just peace. I won, he said softly. Then, after a pause, but I wish you were here to see it. A light wind moved through the trees as if answering him. And for the first time since that hospital night, Ethan felt something different. Not revenge, not anger. Just closure.